Yes, guys, we had a nice Coppa Italia win the other day, but it's time to return our focus to Serie A. And tomorrow is Inter versus Como at home, 5 p.m. UK time kickoff. So make sure you're not caught out by that. We're not the 7:45 p.m. kickoff against Como, who, as we've been discussing last few weeks in the build up to this game, is now a big game. I think it's already become a big game, Como. I think we can say is that we've lost Fiorentina this season as a big team. We can confidently say that now because they're still winless. So we've kind of lost Fiorentina as those teams that big 7, 8 teams, or those tough 7, 8 teams that you would count as big games. One out, but I think now Como is part of this group now of the so-called big games because they are just 3 points behind Inter, only one loss, 6 wins, 6 draws, only 7 goals conceded. So a team that is hard to score against, as Fabregas has coached them fantastically on and off the ball. I would say very well off the ball, primarily more than people give him credit for. They kind of made out to be this hipster, fantastic tiki-taka football playing team, but actually, if you do watch Como a lot of the times, it's not really that. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of pressing, making life difficult for the other team. And 19 goals is a pretty good return, of course. Nowhere near Inter's 28 goals. Before we get into the lineups, there is some big news in the lineup, the predicted lineups. Make sure you leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Before I get into the match preview, actually, I wanted to just show you guys how we're doing the season in terms of, this is the table from soccerstats.com that I like to bring up every once in a while just to see how we're tracking, where are we compared to previous seasons. If it's not that previous seasons or your performance compared to previous season really matters because every season is different. The exact same amount of points we got last season maybe could get us a title this year. Who knows? But it's you're not playing against yourself. You're playing against other teams. But it shows you that we're pretty much there and thereabouts in terms of where we are compared to previous season. We're behind both Inzaghi's last 2 seasons. So even last season's disappointing start, we're behind that, which shows you that we're still because of our 4 losses, we are struggling at the moment. We're not flying, but we're just hanging on to the top of the table thanks to the other teams also not flying. And of course, that Seconda Stella season. Now, I'm not even going to compare it against it because it's almost like an outlier that season. I mean, look at that. The amount of goals that we conceded is absolutely fantastic, and still scoring goals. It's almost an outlier season now that it feels like. But we're doing better than Inzaghi's second season, where of course he was close to getting the sack up until a certain point, and you can see why. 8 wins, 5 losses, kind of similar to this season. No draws, just losses, lots of goals conceded. But hopefully, it doesn't turn out to be like that season. Although we did still win some trophies, and of course went to the Champions League final, but I'd rather not be fighting for top 4 until last few weeks. And yeah, we're still tracking pretty well compared to Inzaghi's first season. So yeah, overall we're not doing too bad, but it just shows the trajectory. If we don't get those losses under control, I wouldn't even mind starting to get some draws under our belt. Let's get into the predicted lineups because there are some predicted big decisions from Christian Chivu. And you know what I'm going to talk about is the right wing back position. Is Andy Diouf going to start or not? In terms of form, in terms of confidence, in terms of keeping that momentum going, as Anthony from Inter Worldwide was saying in his recent shorts. So make sure you check out Inter Worldwide as well. He's saying, you gotta strike while the iron is hot, right? When the player is in form, red hot form, you gotta keep him in. And I am surprised about this reveal that Andy Diouf looks like will be starting as per the latest predicted lineups, not just from Sky Sport Italia, but also Gazzetta dello Sport here have also got Andy Diouf starting as the right wing back. Now, we know that this season, the predicted lineups haven't been as reliable. There is a certain surprise factor that Chivu seems to be able to do with the media this year. Maybe there isn't a mole that leaks information, or we've also heard that he would wait until the kind of literally just a few hours before the game or the morning of the game to actually give the lineup to the players as well. Whereas Inzaghi would a lot of the times give it ahead of time or the day before. So we know this could maybe not accurate, and we see Carlos Augusto return there or Luis Enrique continue there. But as I've said, I'm surprised, but I think it makes sense because of the form, because of the lack of what has been shown by Luis Enrique and Carlos Augusto. Let's be real, Carlos Augusto, as much as we love him, he just looks like a fish out of water on that side. And Andy Diouf, I think, especially if you've got Nico Barella and Akanji next to him, almost guiding him, supporting him, of course, tactically looking after him. Of course, Key was going to be on the sidelines, telling him where to be and how to position himself. But it's of course in midweek it was fine, starting with Frattesi there, Bisek there, but that's against the Serie B team. And by the way, one thing I forgot to mention in my post-match reaction to the Venezia game is that Venezia actually also heavily rotated, so they kind of clearly wanted to just focus on Serie B. They're there for playoffs. So our win now and the performances in that Venezia game, you got to take those. Even we're already taking one with a big heap of salt. I think you need to add another heap of salt in that, because even Venezia rotated quite heavily in that game. But that doesn't take away, I think, from what we saw or the potential that we saw from the Andy Diouf performance. So I think with, of course, him being this inverted wing back who wants to cut in on his left foot, the fact that Barella's there is actually quite good, because similar to how him and Frattesi and Diouf combined, we know that Barella also likes to kind of drift very heavily onto the right hand side. Sometimes if you see Barella's heat map, a lot of the times is heavy red, a lot of red here. He almost, like, if you just looked at Barella's heat map just blindly at times, you think that he's like a right midfielder sometimes, because he really likes to play in this half space around here to combine with Dumfries, with Thuram, with Lautaro, whoever's in that area. So that actually could give him the opportunity to invert into more of a midfielder position, like he wants to do, where he can be more dangerous, cutting in on his left, because we know, he's not really gonna drive towards the right unless he's trying to take someone on 1v1 and tries to give him a different look here and there. So risky decision definitely by Chivu, because we know off the ball, tactically, defensively, that is not Andy Diouf's role. But in terms of what we have at the moment as a temporary solution, tomorrow's the first, I guess you could say, is the real test. Of course, we've seen glimpses. We've seen him against the Serie B team now, so it's like the test is getting higher and higher. But now this is probably the best possible test that Andy Diouf can have as a starter against a good team, but with the help of Akanji and Barella next to him. Also mentally as well, it's interesting in terms of Andy Diouf. He's a midfielder, attacking midfielder. We've seen in the past conversions can happen to wing back, but it usually happens from, in the case of like someone like Ivan Perisic from a winger, from an attacking winger. Victor Moses, a winger. Ashley Young used to be a winger. These types of wing back conversions usually happen from wingers. It's very rare you see a centre mid converting into a wing back. That's quite rare. But because of Andy Diouf's characteristics, it does kind of work. But of course, we just need the mental switch from Andy Diouf has to be there. Perisic, Conte wanted to convert Perisic already in his first season. He already saw that, Perisic can be a great wing back. Physically, characteristics wise, he was a custom built wing back, but Perisic himself wasn't convinced about it. He went on loan to Bayern, did quite well out there. Then he came back at the age of 30 years of age. Then he finally, all right, I'm gonna give this a go. I'm gonna commit. Or in the case of like the Victor Moseses, he just wasn't that good enough to be, a starting winger at Chelsea. And then when Conte came, you almost have to humble yourself. So this is what with Andy Diouf kind of has to do. He has to kind of, you don't want to be, it's not a sexy position wing back. Let's be real, full back, wing back. people make jokes about it. Usually, if you play, as a fullback, it's like you either weren't good enough as a winger or you weren't good enough to be centre back. So you kind of play as a fullback, wing back as well. You got the kind of you have to run up and down the bleep test. You don't want to be doing that in your head. Like especially if you're a midfielder, you think you're a techie player. You want to be attacking. You want to be scoring. You want to be assisting. So I think it might take a little bit of humbling to Andy Diouf to accept this. But at this moment, as we said, like the opportunity is there. That position with Dumfries out is there for the taking. So Andy, just do it, bro. It's right there for the taking. Anyway, we spent too long on that chit chat. Let me know your thoughts on your thoughts on this Andy Diouf position. Is it? Do you think he should start tomorrow, or is it too risky from Chivu? Elsewhere, Zoma returns and goal. I feel like, again, Jose Martinez at some point needs to be given a run into the team, but it is what it is. Acerbi returns. Now, this, once again, I disagree. Although we might not be dominating the ball and be as high pressing as usual against this Como team, I do expect us to be going through phases in this game where we will be also dominated by Como at times and we might have to sit back. But again, I don't really understand, or the lack of commitment by Chivu in terms of this position. He seems to be really rotating a lot in this position. He's almost feels like he's trying to keep everyone happy there, but I feel like he needs to make the decision that if we're going to play with a high line, it has to be Bisek or Kanji, either one of those two. But yeah, the fact that at least Acerbi is now only playing once a week, that's good compared to previous years. That's a good thing. Midfield, we know Hakan Barella, Zielinski. And I think we can now confidently say Zielinski has beaten Sucic for now in the rankings, just for now. The last month or so since Mkhitaryan's injury, he's finally, I think, started. Last season we wanted him to challenge for that Mkhitaryan spot. This season he's actually challenging for that Mkhitaryan spot. So fair play to Zielinski. He did say that Interisti, you're going to see the real Zielinski this year, and we have really started to see the real Zielinski the last few weeks. And I'm happy that he's going to start. And of course, Di Marco there. Lautaro Thuram up front to continue. Hopefully, Lautaro takes his little stat pad against Pisa. Very important stat pad, though. Confidence. And finally, we know he goes through streaks. So hopefully, this is the start of his goal scoring streak because we do need him. And hopefully, Thuram as well with the midweek stat pad against Venezia continues. Looking at Como, the difference is, last season we beat them twice, if you remember, both times 2-0. There's big differences now with this Como team. First of all, Pepe Reina's not in goal. Pepe Reina, I do not know why Cesc Fabregas started Pepe Reina last season as a goalkeeper. I think just for his ball playing ability, but that guy was dusted. He got sent off even on his last ever professional game. We spoiled his last ever game before he retired and he got a red card, if you remember. Even Tucu Correa scored in that game, so shows you. For them, it was the end of the season. We were still trying to win the Scudetto or just hoping that Napoli fall. But for them, it was a throwaway game. And then the other one, again, Thuram scored at the near post on Pepe Reina. And of course, that was their first season in Serie A. This is a different Como team now. I don't expect it to be as easy as it was in those games. But this is their predicted lineup for them. Strong team, but not as, I don't think there's any players in this Como team apart from maybe Nico Paz that actually start in this Inter team. Of course, there's players that I would take it Inter. Maxi Perrone, I think we should have looked at him as a vice Hakan at some point, probably too late now. Kakeret is a nice midfielder that I would definitely, take as a rotational midfielder for us. Or Da Cunha as well, if Da Cunha is the one to start. He's actually a winger that turned into a centre midfielder, which is also quite a rare conversion. Ramon has been I picked him as one of my, best signings up until now from the Real Madrid B team. Very interesting centre-back to look at. Of course, the wingers, Adai has been super exciting. Jesus Rodriguez as well is an exciting winger. But apart from, it's not like in terms of individual names, anything crazy. Here they have Alvaro Morata starting, but Gazzetta has Duvicas starting. So I would be more scared with Duvicas if he starts because Morata, I don't think he's even scored a goal yet this season. But yeah, if Alberto Moreno starts as a left back, I feel like this is definitely a weak point for Como that we should try to exploit, which is maybe why Chivu wants to start Andy Diouf physically, athletically, with Barella on that side assisting him. I think we could have the better of this left-hand side of Como. But yeah, I think it's going to be a difficult game. I'm feeling like doing like a just to be. I feel negative. I don't know why. I know we've had 2 consecutively good results, and we're at home, and this Como team maybe need taken down a notch. But I might just do the negative prediction. I might just go for like a 1-1, maybe our first draw of the season. Of course, I'm hoping that I'm completely wrong. I'm just feeling like this Como team might come to San Siro wanting to show the whole world what they're made of. Cesc Fabregas, or we just sneak a win like 2-1. I feel like it's going to be a very tight game, especially with on the other side with Napoli against Juve. Maybe there's some points that could be dropped there. We need to be there to take the points, of course. But yeah, that's my prediction. Maybe a little bit on the negative side. You let me know in the comments down below your prediction. See you tomorrow for the post-match reaction. Ciao ragazzi, always, Forza Inter.